Hello, everyone. Welcome to the D1Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Healy, pinch hitting for Michael Patrick Rooney, and this is about 30 minutes of college baseball purgatory here with myself, Aaron Fitt, Kendall Rogers. We're going to recap Week 7 around college baseball. Week 7, halfway through the regular season, believe it or not. Before we get to any of that, though, I have to let you know that this episode of the D1Baseball Podcast and every episode of the D1Baseball Podcast this season is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Get ready for a new season of fishing fun with Academy Sports and Outdoors. And reel in the best gear at low prices every day. Plus, Academy offers easy ways to shop and save time, like free 1-hour in-store or curbside pickup on academy.com orders. How we feeling, folks? I personally am rejuvenated because I had a relatively close by weekend in Columbia, South Carolina. But right now I'm currently fighting the what I call the pollen headache. Here in North Carolina. As I look out my window here, there's not a single car that's not covered in it. So it's that's what's happening now. You guys were both local last weekend. So are we feeling rested, recovered, going into the second half of the regular season?
Yeah, overly pollinated also, Joe. It is, it is a tough scene out there right now.
Yeah.
But aside from that, we're doing pretty well. Yes, I had a nice light weekend at home as well. I did catch a game at Duke. On Friday. And then Bradley Smart just kind of took the reins. You take the ball and score, Bradley. He's in town.
Big game, Brad.
He had 4 ACC sites this week. It was an impressive performance for young Mr. Smart.
You've been able to, as you brought in Bradley, you've been able to kind of shift your game from being like a volume scorer to now you're just a facilitator. Like you're just dishing the ball around. You're getting other people involved.
Yeah, he's like a celebrity. He lets schools know he's coming, and like the red carpet just gets rolled out on the entrance.
Many people have compared me to young Tyrone Muggsy Bogues.
I'm not sure I had that comp on you, but I like it.
I think that's apt. Yeah. All right, we've got some games to play this morning here on this here podcast. Love a game to keep us kind of, engaged and keep us going in the right direction here, because I don't know if listeners know this, but we have a tendency to kind of bounce all around. So we're going to try to keep it on the tracks here and turbo pod this sucker. So my first question, well, it's less of a question, more of a prompt, if you will. I'm going to read off a list of potential national title contenders. And the game is, and I will answer too, as to not be the annoying person who just like makes you make tough decisions and sits it out. You're going to have to drop one of these teams. I've got 4 of them. And then if you'd like to talk about which team I didn't mention that you might put in that mix, then let's do that as well. But here are the 4, and you have to drop one of them. You got Tennessee, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida State. Let's start with, I'll start, so I'll give you guys a chance to ruminate because I wrote this question last night, so I've thought about it. I would probably drop Georgia just because I think we've seen they can be a little more volatile. The pitching is getting figured out. It's looked a lot better. Last weekend, Colton Smith was awesome. And so I think he's getting back to something approaching full strength. Brian Curley in the rotation has gone fairly well. So that they've got some things that are moving in the right direction. But we have seen that, that they can be a little more volatile on the mound. So have they figured it out fully? We'll see. But these other teams we're talking about have just been so consistent from minute one this season. Whereas Georgia, despite having a gaudy record, I think they're 28-2. They've had some ups and downs. They've had to fight pretty hard for a lot of those 28 wins. The other teams on this list feel like they've coasted a little bit more. So let's go to Aaron first. What do you got? Who are you dropping on this list?
So Georgia's off the board. I can't drop Georgia.
Well, you can if you want.
Not that I would. I'm just clarifying the rules.
No. It's a good question. You can. We can have the same answers, but go wherever you'd like.
All right, fine, Joe. I don't want to drop any of these teams. I feel like those are the 4 best
That's
teams.
what makes it tough. That's what makes it tough.
But if I have to drop one, I'm going to go ahead and drop the Florida State Seminoles. A couple weeks in a row, we've seen maybe just a little crack in the armor with their starting pitching. And that was one of the things that we liked the most about this team. But 2 weeks in a row, not great outings for Jamie Arnold and Wes Mendez. Now, Joey Vellini continues to be just an absolute dude. And obviously, I believe in Jamie Arnold, and I've been talking about Wes Mendez since the fall of his freshman year. I really like his potential, and he has been very good. I still believe in this team. I want to clarify that, but I'm just saying, if we're looking for cracks in the armor,
you sound like me over here, Mr. Political.
Well, the question was garbage. Next. Go ahead, Kendall. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on something a second ago, on Arnold, like you're still a believer. I would agree. Like I'm a believer in that. I mean, obviously Joey Vellini's been really good. I would still have Florida State as a national championship contender. I think Georgia for me, because of the reasons Joe illustrated, just even over the weekend, Colton Smith did really well for him, but they also had several like pretty rough outings against Auburn. So I tend to think Georgia's a little bit more of a, not quite as a dead set commodity, I think, as we get to the midseason point.
Yeah, and I should have, for the sake of all of us, I should have done the caveat up front that these are literally the top 4 teams in our rankings.
Yeah.
That's the 1, 2, 3, 4. So like, I think we all are believers in these teams, or else we'd probably have them ranked differently. But if we're gonna play this fun game and nitpick a little bit, that's what this is about.
Well, I would add too, since we didn't mention either of these teams, like I do think, I watched Arkansas over the weekend pretty extensively against Vanderbilt, and I will say this: I think I thought going into the weekend that the gap between Tennessee and Arkansas was pretty sizable. I kind of left the weekend going, the gap between Tennessee and Arkansas actually is not very sizable. Like I thought Arkansas looked really good. I mean, they played excellent defense. The pitching was at they pitched a really high level. Charles Davlon was awesome. They hit for power. They hit with runners in scoring position. They were clutch. I mean, Arkansas looked awesome. And I just think the gap between those two teams is much smaller than I thought.
I just want to say welcome, Kendall. Welcome to
known Arkansas hater, Kendall.
The Arkansas bandwagon is a good place to be right now. Coach Rooney, of course, has them as his national title pick in the preseason. I've been singing their praises. You guys have come around. After 6 weeks after you were gnashing your teeth about the Arkansas offense, you've come around as Arkansas having an elite offense, like I said.
To be fair, they weren't hitting an elite clip earlier in the season.
It was the second week. It's like 2 weeks of the season. Oh, they can't hit. They can hit. Obviously, they can hit. God, I love rubbing your face in it. It's my favorite.
Well,
I will say this:
everybody wants to knock down the champ.
It was exciting to see. If you're an Arkansas fan, I think it's very encouraging to see Gabe Gackle have a good outing this weekend.
Yep.
I think obviously that's huge, and even like I mentioned early in the season, I thought with Gage Wood as their Sunday starter, like that's the best rotation in the country. But even with if they've got Gackle pitching like Gackle, and you go Root, Gackle, Beitelscheiss, that's right there too, is maybe the best rotation in the country. Beitelscheiss is good, man. Like, Patrick Ebert, I think he talked about it on one of our shows last week. Like, he saw that guy's name in the portal. He's like, oh, okay, Arkansas's got their Friday starter, and it turns out he shows up at Arkansas and starts out as a midweek guy. But this guy has dominant, ability. He's really good. It's a great Sunday piece, and we love their bullpen arms. So I know they haven't pitched quite to the level that I expected them to. I certainly said that I thought they were the best pitching staff in the country. I still think over the course of the long season, they will prove to be the best pitching staff in the country, but Tennessee has a pretty good argument right now for that one.
Yeah. I saw Tennessee over the weekend, and what stood out to me is just like they were behind to South Carolina on Saturday. I think it was the 7th inning. And I not for 1 second thought that game was in jeopardy. Mm-hmm. And I think that just shows the level of at this point faith you just have to have in that team. And sure enough, they came back and won it with some clutch hitting. And I think it's incredible that they've been without Gavin Keelan. Now he came back in a minimal role this past weekend, but they haven't had Gavin Keelan as a dude for them the last few weeks. And all it seems to have done is just allowed Dalton Bargo to get really hot because, Bargo was kind of an odd man out there, but because they've had to shuffle some pieces around, it's allowed him to get in the lineup with more consistency. And like the dude is just swinging it really, really well right now. He's got like almost, half the at-bats of some of the guys who've been in the lineup every day, and he's tied for third on the team in home runs. Like just unreal power. But regardless, I mean, that just kind of goes to show that what they've done there where, losing arguably their best guy this season for a couple of weeks has just made it to where their lineup has gotten even deeper because it's, Bargo's gotten hot. Ariel Antigua's incredible defender, like makes them better defensively that, Keelan was out. So embarrassment of riches is the phrase that comes to mind. Let's go ahead.
No, I was going to say I saw the play, but the defensive play by Antigua over the weekend.
Oh,
where
in the hole, yeah.
When he went in the hole and went over to third, I mean, that's as good of a play as you'll see this year.
Yeah, good athletically, high IQ play too. Like, knew exactly where he was going with the ball in the moment. Like, super high IQ play. Let's transition to talk a little bit about the middle of the rankings here. So I've got 4 teams that have kind of bounced here and there and all around. Some we had higher than they are right now. Some have just kind of moved up and down. Which one of these 4 are you buying? I will start to give you guys a chance to think about it, and then we'll go to Kendall after me on this time. We've got Oregon, which is now ranked 15, has been in the top 10 at points this season. North Carolina, which started off really high in the rankings, dipped down, now is maybe making a little shimmy back up. Auburn is at 16. They were close to the top 10 this past week, but obviously got swept by Georgia. They fall down a little bit. And then Vanderbilt at 23. We debated maybe even moving Vanderbilt out of the top 25. Ultimately, they kind of held on by their fingernails there. So those 4 teams, Oregon, UNC, Auburn, Vanderbilt, which are you buying, or buying most, I guess, because we could be buying multiple of these teams. And I'm going to go Oregon because, I mean, they're the highest ranked of the 4, so I guess maybe it's a little bit of an easy answer. But I also just think, Coach Rooney has talked about how sometimes they look bored out there with playing in the Big Ten. And I think that could be true, and also be a situation where now that they've dropped a series they absolutely had no business losing to Ohio State over the weekend. I do wonder if that does snap them out of it a little bit, where it starts to become a situation where, hey, we're starting to lose our grip on some things we want here, like playing at home in June, right? That could cost us that. So we need to get it in gear here. I kind of have a faith in that happening. Also, selfishly, later this month, it's not quite this month, in April, I'm going to be at the Oregon State series, and I would like that series to be as consequential as possible. So selfishly, I'm kind of rooting for them to get it back in gear, but it's not great that they seem kind of disinterested sometimes and drop games that you think they shouldn't. But if that's really the case, then I'm confident that they will snap out of that at some point, especially given that in that league, they are going to face teams where they are just going to be so much more talented than the other that, you can play maybe a B+ game and get a victory in a way that you couldn't always in the pack. So I like Oregon there. So Kendall, what do you got between Oregon, Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Auburn?
Yeah, I like Oregon's team too. I'm buying those guys kind of like you are, but I'll go with North Carolina. I get that over the weekend against Miami, the offense wasn't awesome, but I mean, they gave up 6 runs in 3 games. Knapp did really well for them on the series opener. Jason DeCaro, 2 runs in 5 1/3. Ryan Lynch was awesome out of the bullpen. When you pitch at that kind of level, and they do it pretty consistently, it's going to pay off at some point. And so, I'm still buying North Carolina.
Yeah. And once again, you've got Aiden Houck as your Sunday guy. Like there are not a lot of teams. I mean, we talked about Arkansas's trio. We talked about Tennessee's pitching, but not a lot of teams that can match Knapp, DeCaro, and Houck in the rotation. That's elite. And they have elite bullpen arms. I just think it's an elite pitching staff, and their offense is certainly not as good as it was last year, but absolutely buying North Carolina. But I'm gonna give you a different answer also, just for the sake of the game here. I think everyone wants to bury Vanderbilt because, and I get it, the offense leaves you wanting, clearly it's not 2015, it's not 2019 anymore. Like the era has changed some. And it does feel like Vanderbilt has been just kind of muddling along the last couple of years. I mean, they're still in regionals every year, but it's like they're not the dominant force they used to be. But I got to tell you, I still think, again, teams that have real pitching stand out to me. And Vanderbilt still does. And so, J.D. Thompson, Cody Bowker, now if this Connor Fennell thing turns out to be real, okay, like maybe, we've got three legit dudes that can, or 3 guys that can really give you length in the rotation, which is an advantage over almost everybody that they're going to play. Again, love the bullpen arms, tons of firepower back there. I mean, we've talked all about, Miller Green and, Kranzler and Sawyer Hawks. I mean, they've got a lot of nice pieces and they can mix and match with you. The McIlvain thing is weird. I mean, like maybe the most talented guy on the staff can't throw strikes, and that's disappointing. But I think they're deep enough that they're fine even without him playing a prominent role. I think this pitching staff is going to keep them afloat until their offense finds something. And I have to believe their offense is going to find something, because you still have, some nice pieces, right? I mean, Riley Nelson's obviously been a great boost for him. Jacob Humphrey's figured it out now in his second year in the program. Brody Johnson is clearly a star already. You need more out of some of your older guys, like your RJ Austins, and who's been okay. Certainly he's been okay, but he's not been a star like they hoped. I think there's another gear for him. I think there's another gear for Jonathan Vastine. I think somebody else like a Jaden Davis or Mike Mancini or Braden Holcomb. I don't know. One of these guys or a couple of these guys have got to get it going for sure. But I still believe in the talent there. I don't think it's an elite talent in the lineup. I mean, it's not like the top half of the SEC. It's probably a bottom half of the SEC order, but I think it can be offensive enough with their pitching staff for them to be in the mix for like a back end regional host spot. I still believe that, and probably wind up being a 2 seed, but I could see them winding up, in the mix for like that 15, 16, national seed position. And so I just think that people are maybe a little overreacting to a bad weekend against an elite team.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I'll give a quick word on Auburn here too. Their offense to me has exceeded my expectations. And so if it's a situation where that lineup is going to be as good as it's been and the pitching is still rounding into form, and I think it is, like Cade Fisher is still not getting deep in games, but he's been better the last few weeks. So like, is that somebody who's coming on? Maybe there was a physical concern that's being, alleviated or whatever it is. Perhaps he's getting better. Sam Dutton has been really consistent. Those freshman arms are so talented. I have to imagine some of those guys will kind of continue to come online as time goes on. So if you're telling me the offense has been really good, exceeding expectations, and the pitching staff still have some pieces to work out, like that feels like a coaching staff that's going to find a way to make it work. I think about 2 years ago when they hosted and, their best starter was Tommy Vale. Like, this pitching staff is a lot more talented than that one. So I have to think they're going to figure some things out as time goes on. It's just a matter of, do they take too many haymakers in the SEC to get, into position to host again, or to maybe be an Omaha team again? We'll obviously see. Quick note to apologize for background noise. I've been alerted to the fact that is coming through my microphone. The building next to mine, as I look at it right now, is under some heavy renovation. So, here it comes again. So I will be muting a little more often, so as to not.
I was just concerned that someone was being thrown in a wood chipper outside or something.
I thought you were going to apologize to Tommy Vale. Tommy's driving down the street, listening to the pod, taking strays out of nowhere. Like, what? Look, come on, I was good that year. What do you want, man? I had a great year.
He was good that year. Yeah, he was a perfectly acceptable Friday starter in terms of the results. But man, it was not what we think of when we think of SEC Friday guy. It's, we don't necessarily think of it as Casey Mize, Tanner Burns, Tommy Vale, in terms of lineage of Auburn Friday guys. We're going to get to our next question here in just a second, but I also have to let you know, in addition to Academy Sports and Outdoors, every episode of the D1 Baseball Podcast is brought to you by Tecovas Boots. Whether it's the leather in your glove or your tailgating chairs, baseball people know that quality matters. That's why we love Tecovas Boots. Born in Texas, just like Kendall and I, handcrafted with over 200 meticulous steps and comfortable from day one, they're perfect for wherever the college baseball season takes you. From road trips to rivalry games, post-game celebrations, or just everyday wear, Tecovas boots are made to go the distance. Find your perfect pair today at Tecovas. All right. As another person gets thrown into the wood chipper, my next question is, we're going to talk about teams that are outside the top 25 right now, specifically teams that have been dumped from the rankings in the last couple of weekends. This is a time of year where it feels like there's particular tumult in our top 25 because everyone's kind of into the meat and potatoes of conference schedules now. So there's no more, if you've got deficiencies, like, you're going to get found out in your conference at this time of year. So I've got 5 teams here that have been recently dumped from the rankings. We're going to buy on one of them. So we've got Wake Forest, which just came out this past week, swept against Virginia Tech. We've got Stanford, just came out this week, Arizona as well, and then UVA and UC Santa Barbara that came out the week prior. So the five teams are Wake, Stanford, Arizona, Virginia, and UC Santa Barbara. And it's important here to apply some context. So, the 4 power conference teams are in a situation where they can they have an opportunity to get back into being an at-large team. Like, all of their big picture goals are in front of them. UCSB is a little more complicated. The Big West does have a tournament this year, so it's no longer a situation where your season is toast if you don't win the league. But the context is a little bit different here. I am going to go with Arizona. I think there's just a lot of opportunity in the Big 12. The Big 12 is very flat, and by that I mean just like there's no elite teams in that league, it doesn't appear, and the bottom also isn't very defined. It's like everybody is in the middle of that league, which makes it a lot of fun. Like, it's week to week, I have no idea what to expect, and that's beautiful and great. But one of the results of that is that I have no idea who the best team is out there, and Arizona at times has played like they could be the answer to that question, right? So I'm going to go there. I like the offensive pieces. They're a little nicked up, it sounds like, of late, but let's assume they get back to being healthy. And then their frontline arms are really, really good. Like, the pitching depth is a little more suspect, but the frontline arms are really good. And I think in the postseason, we've talked about this quite a bit over the years. Yes, having depth on the mound is great, but once we get in the postseason, it is as much about, hey, in game 1 of a regional or game 1 of a super or what have you, who are your dudes that can outpitch the other team's dudes? And I do kind of like Arizona's frontline pitching there. So I like Arizona, just given the league, given the top end talent for them. But what say you, Aaron? We'll go to you first on this one.
This is tough because it feels like you're asking me to choose between 2 of my children.
Figured that might be the case.
And I listen, I love them both. I'm proud of them both. Okay. It's not about who got first in the science fair in the 2nd grade. It's about the long haul. We're trying to raise them into being upstanding humans, individuals. And so I'm talking about, of course, Virginia and Wake Forest, 2 teams that I'm absolutely still in on. But if I had to pick just one of them, I mean, I've held steady with Virginia all year long. I've stayed on the ship through the choppy waters. Everyone else was jumping overboard, not me. I was pot committed. I was all in. And we're starting to get rewarded for that faith. This was a big week for Virginia, obviously sweeping Stanford. A good Stanford team that has done things already in the league, that swept Duke and that won a series at North Carolina. And Virginia was coming off getting swept at home last week by Duke. They needed to bounce back in a big way. And hey, they're still not in a great spot. They're 6-6 in the league, though. They're hanging in there, and they're 15-11 overall. Like, you can see it. It's now starting to come together. Now, there's still some things that need to happen. I mean, Harrison Didewick's got to get it going. That's a guy that was just about a preseason All-American. He was right there in that mix. Who's hitting, he's got a 567 OPS, and it was kind of been in and out of the lineup a little bit this weekend and just didn't really produce when he was in there. But what was a good sign was Jacob Ferentz had a good weekend, and him starting to come around is huge. He started all 3 games. He had been kind of splitting time with Trey Wells behind the plate, but I think he started all 3 games behind the plate and hit for him. I like to see that. I like to see Evan Blanco, giving them some length, of course. There's 5 innings, 5 solid innings. Woolfolk gave him a great start in the series opener. I still think Tomas Valencias will wind up being a horse for them down the stretch. He's had kind of ups and downs here in his freshman year, but he's just super talented. I still think there's enough in the bullpen. I just think they're a really good roster that had a inexplicably bad first half. And now I'm thinking this could be the springboard for them to get it going. So I picked them to win a national title heading into the season. I have not once jumped off that. I'm standing by it. Virginia to win it all in 2025. Kendall.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
What a dismount. I mean, really.
I stuck it, didn't I?
Yeah, just really stuck the landing off the pommel horse. My goodness. All right. Yeah, Kendall, please. Aaron introduced you so well, but yes, it's your turn.
Thank you very much. I do like the direction Virginia's going. I'll stick with Arizona, though. I like their pick Arizona. I saw those guys at Minute Maid a few weeks ago, and, I actually really like their weekend rotation. Smith Bailey's a really nice piece at the back end of their rotation. The other thing about Arizona, too, is people go, oh, well, they lost a series to Baylor over the weekend, but they're also without Brendan Summerhill for another couple of weeks. So I think we saw how good they can be, the West Virginia series before that, especially when he's in that lineup. But I think once he gets back, that's a really solid offensive lineup. And for the most part, they've pitched pretty well this year. I know they didn't pitch great over the weekend against Baylor, but for the most part, they've pitched pretty well. So, and that's a team, again, that, hosted a regional last year, didn't play particularly well. And so they've been through it before. They kind of know what's needed to take that next step this year. So I'm going to go with Arizona.
Yeah. A quick word too on Wake. I think if you want to make the case for Wake here, it's that, we all really like the talent. I think all three of us are on board about that, but there's just like some basic blocking and tackling stuff that they just need to clean up. They're doing the tough stuff, right? Like they're super talented and like the stuff you can't teach, they're great at, but they're kind of sloppy defensively outside of Merrick Houston. There's too many free passes, like Matthew Dallas in the rotation, really struggling with that in particular. Some of their bullpen guys, same thing. It's just like some basic stuff that can be cleaned up. And if you're an optimist about it, it's like, well, those are things you can fix, right? Like if your stuff isn't good enough, there's really no way to fix that in season, right? But like playing catch, you can theoretically fix in season. So I do think there should be quite a bit of optimism there. And it feels similar, like UC Santa Barbara is a team where it's just like you can point to the Big West and be like, look, they're going to have a lot of opportunities to get rolling because they're just going to be more talented than they've already played the other team that rivals them in terms of talent in UC Irvine. Didn't go well, by the way, but they're going to have an opportunity to just out talent teams. And so wouldn't be surprised if any of those teams. Go ahead.
Well, one thing about UCSB real quick, Joe, that is a little concerning is the fact that Tyler Bremner and Jackson Flora have not pitched very well lately. And I think for UCSB and for, frankly, most Big West teams, for those teams to maximize their potential, like the stars like that, they have to produce. And those two guys have not been great the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, and the best thing that could probably happen for the Big West is, Irvine's built itself enough of a moat. You'd be confident in them being able to be an at-large team. It's that they win the league and get the at-large bid, and UCSB wins the tournament because UCSB is also talented enough that even if they kind of back their way into it, they're going to be super dangerous in a regional with the quality of their arm talent in particular.
They're 76 in the RPI right now. I know it's a little early to look at that, but they're going to have to probably win the conference tournament at this point. By the way, I'm going to go ahead, Aaron.
No, you go ahead, Kendall.
No, I was going to say I'm going to be my typical self. I'm going to cheat a little bit and go off the board, but keep an eye on Duke. Aaron and Bradley both had some really good stuff on the Blue Devils over the weekend. But Duke guys has now won 5 of their last 6 conference games. They're another team that was preseason ranked that fell out that is red hot right now going to that UNC series.
Yeah, you hate to see that. We got another game coming where we're going to talk about teams outside the rankings, and Kendall's just like, just jumping way ahead here, messing up Joe's board.
Well, no, it's okay because the last question here.
That's what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, the last question
what
here
about?
wouldn't have roped Duke in, so I'm glad he mentioned Duke. Aaron, in the interest of
stay in your lane, get off my line.
In the entrance of time balance, do you have someone else off the board that you would like to? I want to make sure you say your piece if you've got something.
Oh well, thank you.
Sure.
Sauce. So we're just talking about any team that's not just currently in the top 25.
Yeah. No, you don't have to, but give me somebody you're buying.
Someone whose jib I like the cut of.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go West Virginia. talking about these Big 12. Again, you're right about the flat Big 12 because I also could have gone Kansas just as easily. I like the cut of Kansas's jib. But West Virginia, they're sitting there, 4-3 in the league at this point. I think won a nice road series at BYU, really got the bats going. My guy Chase Meyer, I don't know what he did this weekend, but it seemed like he'd been pitching better and had kind of settled in, which I think is huge for them. Just can be a game-changing guy. If you're looking for somebody that I think has the capability of making a real postseason run in the Big 12. I think West Virginia fits that mold. I think it's a very deep roster with some great experience in the lineup. I know that losing Sam White was a big blow, but you still got, the Brody Cressers and the Logan Salves, these experienced guys who have been in a super regional and just feel like winning ball players. They've got a number of those guys. And I like the depth on their pitching staff. So yeah, Mountaineers.
Love it. That's a good pick. I agree with that there. I mean, to your point, we could have thrown a dart at the Big 12 and come up with a team that we could make a case for, being a team to buy. All right, last question. There are 4, and I'm going to change it up on the fly here. I had a different idea for this, but I think I've got a better concept. There are 4 SEC teams currently sitting at 1-8. At least 3 of the 4 were teams that we thought were kind of lock postseason teams. One of them was not, but we could have maybe crafted a scenario. We're also not going to talk about 0-9 Mizzou. Sorry, Mizzou, tough scene. But there are 4 1-8 teams in the SEC, and I'm going to assign you a team, and I will go first to allow you to kind of give it some thought. I'm going to assign you a team, and I want you to try to sell me on the idea that they're going to have a strong second half and get back to being certainly a postseason team and maybe more. So those 4 teams are Texas A&M, Florida, Mississippi State, and South Carolina. And so I'm going to take that, what I believe is the toughest one right off the bat, and that's South Carolina. Aaron, you're going to do Mississippi State. Kendall, you're going to do A&M. And then we can –
You want me to explain how I think A&M is going to turn the corner against that schedule?
That's right.
You can hear the derision dripping out of his voice.
Give me an hour and a half of research, and I'll get back to you.
We'll let you go third, just for the sake of that. And then Florida's in this list too, but I feel like Florida's is kind of simple, where it's that team's just been kind of banged up, and they are getting healthier. So there's that, and then also they've already played Tennessee and Georgia, so the schedule, as far as any schedule in the SEC lightens up, theirs does lighten up as time goes on. So the South Carolina case, I will start. They're just under-talented. That's the part that's hard about this. They just relative to especially to the upper crust of the SEC, we saw that over the weekend against Tennessee. They're just under-talented. But I will say this. They're playing hard. They're doing a lot of little things right. They're playing well. They're playing pretty good fundamental baseball. Their pitchers are throwing strikes for the most part. Some of the freshmen are really coming around. KJ Scobie's swinging the bat pretty well. Bo Hollins is swinging the bat pretty well. Ethan Petrie is showing signs of pressing a little bit, but that makes some sense. He probably feels an immense amount of pressure to get that team going, but obviously he's extremely talented. Nathan Hall's having a great year. So there have been some things that have gone right along the way for South Carolina, but they're just outmanned. But if you told me that just by kind of doing the whole control what you can control thing, where you play catch, you throw strikes, you have competitive at-bats, if you told me that they kind of get back into being – they go kind of 500-ish the rest of the way in the SEC and give them a chance to play their way back on the right side of the bubble in Hoover. I think I'd believe you there. It's a long shot. I'll grant that. But if they do that kind of stuff well, as they have at least a shot. So that's the South Carolina case. Who would like to go first with their which counselor would like to go next?
I can go.
All right.
So Hail State, first of all, I think even this coaching staff knew that it was going to be a little bit daunting out of the gate from a schedule standpoint in league play. I don't think they expected to get swept at home by Texas. That was tough. At Oklahoma, tough road series. You kind of think you're probably going to lose 2 out of 3. And then at LSU, gosh, again, you hate getting swept, but they were in that middle game. It was 2-1. They got great pitching from Pico Khan, Stone Simmons, and I still think that they've got some nice arms in their bullpen. Now it doesn't feel like they've got the starting pitching that you want to give them length. It does put a lot of stress on that bullpen. I feel like they can mix and match enough to be very competitive for at least 2 out of 3 weekend games. I don't know if they've got the depth. Obviously, you need more than 2/3 of inning from Carson Ligon. That's just a bottom line. We know he's better than that. We've seen him be better than that. He's got to be better than that. LSU's good, and they jumped him, but man, that's a key. For them to, I think, reach their potential, you got to have more than just one reliable starting pitcher, and he's the guy. And so if you're looking for a roadmap for Mississippi State, I think that's number one. Is we need more from Ligon. Their lineup to me is just, Joe. I'm trying to sell myself on the lineup because there are pieces that I like. I mean, Hunter Hines has been around forever. He's been productive. He's fine again this year. Ace Reese has largely delivered what we thought he would deliver, and we thought he was going to be a star for them, and he's got 9 home runs. He's doing his job, ton of RBIs. Noah Sullivan's been a solid run producer. I mean, Nolan Stevens, we were high on him. He's having a good year. Aaron Downs has still been pretty actually, it's been pretty good. The lineup's been not a terrible problem. I mean, you like to get, you'd like to get a little more out of some guys, but I mean, by and large, I don't think this is like, oh God, they're just buried offensively. Like they can't even compete with these. I think they can. I don't think it's kind of like Vanderbilt. I don't think it's an elite SEC offense, but I think it's perfectly cromulent, and they just need to be better on the mound. And so I don't know if I have got a great read on that or not, but they're 1-8. You've got South Carolina at home this weekend, so maybe there's a get right opportunity, and they can use that as a springboard. And then, if you survive the next weekend at Alabama, then you got Florida at home. And it's weird to think of Florida as potentially a get right series. I don't know that I necessarily believe that. I think at some point Florida's going to be playing better, but Florida's also 1-8. So in theory, it's a favorable 2 of the next 3 weeks with home series against 1-8 teams in the league. And so maybe that's your path to kind of get them back on track.
Kendall, what have you cooked up for A&M for us?
A lot of pain. I'll say this. I was going through A&M's schedule just now. So here is A&M's remaining series. At Tennessee, South Carolina at home, at Arkansas, at Texas, LSU, 3 straight weeks, Missouri, Georgia. Okay, so not to get too crazy here, but so going through their schedule, I'm assuming a sweep over Missouri. I'm assuming 2 out of 3 against South Carolina. And here's where I'm really taking a bold step. I'm assuming 1 win at Arkansas, 1 win at Texas, 1 win against LSU, and 1 win against Georgia. Fellas, I still have them at 10-20. After all of that.
Yeah.
That's just a really tough pathway. I mean, if you're A&M, you're going to have to this sounds crazy, but I mean, I guess you can't rule out a series win over LSU at home. Like, weird stuff can happen at Bluebell. And I guess Texas, there's some elements there that can make that competitive. But I mean, again, even if you win both of those series, you're still only at 12 wins. They didn't do much in non-conference. So, I mean, the pathway is incredibly difficult. And I'll say one more thing on A&M real quick. A lot of people are comparing them what about Florida last year? Well, let's not forget, guys, that Florida last year not only did pretty well in the weekend in non-conference, they had that series win over Miami and Coral Gables. They also, by the way, opened SEC play with a series win over, at the time, top 5 A&M at home, and they got a series win at LSU. When CAG did that huge homer in the series finale. So, it's a different resume than A&M.
Yeah, but A&M did beat Kentucky on Friday night, so that's comparable. I was not ready to bury the Aggies. I thought, okay, you got Kentucky at home, and we all have respect for Kentucky and think they're a solid club, but you got Kentucky at home. Series you have to win. I was like, all right, if the Aggies win this series, then maybe there's a glimmer of hope. And they got boat race the last 2 days. Well, I guess the middle game was a high scoring game, but gave up a lot of runs. They gave up 24 runs the last 2 days, and pitching is their thing. And I mean, I guess maybe it's nice that they scored some runs, the first 2 games of that series. Maybe you can put your hat on that, but gosh, I mean, you got to win that series. You got to win that series. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're where they were in the league. This feels like to me, that's it. I'm out now. I'm out on the Aggies. I just think it's too deep of a hole.
Yeah, a couple things there is I feel like the more interesting comp might be to last year's LSU, which was 3-12 in the conference. Didn't win much of anything the first half of SEC play, but that back half of that schedule for A&M just feels like it might be too much. And I think your best hope is that they're just so overwhelmed with motivation to go out and beat Texas, because it is a lot of returning guys from that team that felt pretty jilted right after Omaha. Do they come out like a house of fire and win that series? But the fact that we're having to sit here and twist ourselves into knots to try to come up with the path tells you about all you need to know. And if the pitching is going to slip, that's a real problem.
There's no question. And their defense at times over the weekend was bad. I mean, I think I have to go back and tally how many guys they hit, but I mean, they were hitting guys left and right against UK. Of course, that's kind of UK's game, but they did not look very good. And for a team, and the thing about A&M too is as Fitt pointed out, that was a must-win series, and they played like crap. That's not a good sign for the rest of the season. The good news for A&M is that Tony Vitello is known as being very compassionate towards his opponents, and that's who they play this weekend. That's
right. They'll probably Tennessee will certainly have mercy on A&M just because they can. Yeah. It's good for the league. All right, gentlemen, sounds like an episode. That's a good as a landing spot as any here. Fun times, fun conversation. Can't believe we're halfway through the regular season, but that just means the more fun half is coming. Believe it. The more fun half of the season is right in front of us. That's kind of nice, kind of exciting. I've heard rumors that the Nerdcast is coming this week.
That's right.
We'll see if that's just a rumor or if that's reality.
Nothing that Aaron loves more than talking RPI in week 8.
Oh,
yeah. I can't wait for you guys. I can't wait for you guys to have to debate. Do we put Xavier in? They have a great RPI and they're 2-1 in the Big East and 14-14 overall.
I mean, at this point, I think your beloved UTRGV has got to be right in the hosting mix. They're still 24th in the RPI. So, you got that to look forward to.
Look, jokes aside, they could host. Their facility is nice.
That's true.
It's a former minor league park.
I definitely had on my bingo card no College Station regional and an Edinburgh regional.
Oh,
yep, that's right.
Love that.
That would really be something. The Fighting Skip Johnsons down there in Edinburgh. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the D1 Baseball Podcast. Production of D1Baseball.com. I almost got the Highway to Hoover read in there. I knew that was going to happen eventually. Thank you to our sponsors for this and every episode of the D1 Baseball Podcast, Academy Sports and Outdoors, and Tecovas Boots. Want to thank Aaron Fitt and Kendall Rogers for joining me on this journey today, and thank you, the listeners, for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Runes is back next week, I promise. This is not a Wally Pipp situation. Talk to you then.